Hi, this is Elliot Haspel and welcome to another edition of Best Practices Weekly. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of writing knowledge for students, and this comes from an article in the Journal of Educational Psychology in which two university professors talk about what is it about the writing process that students really need to know in order to be strong writers. And writing knowledge here is distinguished from writing content. Writing content would be, how do you structure a paragraph? What does it mean to have a strong characterization? What does really good word choice look like? That's content, what you're actually putting into the writing. They're talking about here with knowledge of writing is knowledge of the writing process itself, of the structure, of what good writers do, things like that. They cross over a little bit in kind of a Venn diagram, but for the most part that's the distinction. So what the researchers were looking at, they were looking at 2nd and 4th grade students, and they were really trying to assess the degree to which these 4 different types of writing knowledge played into students' writing skill. And the 4 types of knowledge are these. First are substantive processes, and that's kind of a fancy way for just saying the steps of the writing process. Things like, what do you actually do to create the substance of writing? So, doing the pre-writing, doing the revising, doing the publishing, the steps of the writing process, knowing about those, but also knowing different types of ways to do that, knowing that you might want to create a story map, knowing that you might need to take notes on things as you're brainstorming that you're going to want to include. These are substantive processes because they're all the different things that good writers do to create strong substance in their actual pieces of writing. The second is these mechanical processes, and mechanical processes are much more about the sort of nitty-gritty of writing. So this is, you want to make sure you're spelling words correctly. You want to make sure that in fact you are writing neatly, and that maybe you want to actually type the thing up later. So these are very mechanical, they're very technical. They don't really have anything to do with the actual content or substance of what you're writing. It's much more just about kind of the side color that you're adding into it. The third type of writing knowledge they were looking at is motivational knowledge. And this is knowledge of how do you maintain effort in the face of challenges. And as a teacher, this was one that I know sort of wasn't as obvious as maybe the other two were. So when you're starting to get frustrated when you're writing, what do you do about that? When you're hitting writer's block and you're feeling like, I just don't know what to do here, well, what steps can you take? That's sort of motivational knowledge of what good writers do. And then there are this knowledge about story elements. And so in this particular study, they were having students write fiction stories off of a prompt of a picture. And so for this, they were looking at to what extent is it important that students have the knowledge of the story elements, so that stories have beginnings, middle, and end, things like that. So sort of these fundamental structural elements of whatever type of writing that they're doing, that they would need to have that. And in looking at these 4 types of knowledge, what they found were a couple of interesting things. First of all, each and every one of these 4 types of knowledge does have a significant impact on students' writing ability. So rather than just knowing sort of the content of writing, actually knowing how to be a good writer definitely matters. And in fact, they need to know both substantive processes, mechanical processes, motivational knowledge, and the elements of whatever type of story or piece of writing they're doing. All 4 of those matter, and interestingly, all four of them matter roughly equally. So you can't really have 3 and not 1. There isn't one that matters less than the others. All of them matter quite a bit to how students are doing. And it's interesting to note that, in other words, if a student is able to talk about what good writers do, because in essence the way they figured out whether students had these were by interviewing them, the students that could talk about it, that could have a discourse about writing, were better writers. Which maybe is self-explanatory, but is interesting when we think about teaching writing. We don't often think about quizzing students or just, in a way, interviewing them about what they know about writing. It's much more asking them what they think about the content of the writing. And so when we're talking about what kind of impact here, combined all four of these put together, these four sort of essential writing knowledges, explain between 15 and 20% of the variance between two similar students. And all of that means that if you had two students that were very, very similar and you controlled for lots of different things that might be different about them, and you essentially had two nearly identical students, and one of them, you made sure that they had really strong writing knowledge in these four areas, and one of them didn't have that, you would expect to see a 15 to 20% of that difference between the two students' ability would be able to be shown just because they had better writing knowledge. So that's pretty significant when we think about sort of trying to figure out what makes students better, good, strong writers. And so the sort of conclusion that the authors draw is that in addition to teaching writing content, it's really important that teachers be teaching writing knowledge as well, and knowledge of what it means to be a good writer, what good writers do. And again, these substantive processes, these mechanical processes, about motivational knowledge, and also the knowledge of story elements or the elements of whatever structure type of writing they're doing. Thanks for watching, and happy teaching!